So I'm here today to present to you on the novel use of Lego-based therapy in paediatric AAC users. So we're going to talk a little bit about what an AAC user is. Obviously, I'm coming from a communication background, talking to yourselves as simulation experts. So please feel free if anybody has any questions about the terminology at the end. If I've not done as good a job as I should explaining, please feel free to just ask. So what is Lego-based therapy? Lego-based therapy is a form of collaborative play therapy. It's something that we within the speech-language community use quite often, generally used with pupils with autism spectrum condition. It takes a naturalistic approach to the development of social communication and social interaction skills, and it's originally pioneered by Daniel Legoff, who's an American psychologist. He was working in a clinic with two autistic pupils and noticed that when a box of Lego was brought into the room, they actually began to interact, which was something he hadn't actually seen before. So Lego-based therapy uses play to develop social communication skills, social interaction skills, and also things like joint attention and problem solving. Each group member takes on a role. There are 4 roles within a Lego group, and throughout the sessions, generally these will be rotated to ensure that all pupils get to try different things and develop different skills throughout the sessions. It also uses children's interest to promote the development of social communication and play skills. There's been a lot of research into the effectiveness of social communication interventions within speech and language therapy. Generally, in the past, they haven't got a very good evidence base, and success rates for generalisation of skills isn't very good. So it's often something that isn't actually targeted by NHS-funded interventions. Lego-based therapy is something that can be linked very well to Baron Cohen's empathising systemising model, which is a model that focuses on the idea of autistic pupils and people in general being much stronger systemisers, so people who are able to deal with patterns, things like engineering, scientists, maths, and they're much better at those skills than they are with empathetic skills, so things like taking into account other people's thoughts and feelings. It also links very nicely into social constructivism, which is something that I'll touch on later. So Lego-based therapy uses can be used, as I said previously, to develop skills like initiating conversations with peers, sustaining interactions with peers for an increased length of time, and also things like problem solving whilst working together in a group. Really nice for mutual goal setting and mutual joint attention skills and listening skills as well. Within Lego-based therapy, we can work on kits, so things that you would generally pick up off the shelves in Asda, Tesco, things like cars, farm sets. They can also work on freestyle building skills, which are where we basically give pupils a massive box of Lego and encourage them to use their imagination to build whatever it is that they want to build. Primarily, Lego-based therapy is used with autistic pupils, as I've previously said, and generally these are verbal young people between the ages of around 11 to 16 years old. I don't work in that client group. My client group generally are kind of between the ages of 3 and 16 and have a profound range of learning disabilities. Generally developmental disabilities, including things like Down syndrome, ASD, general other syndromes, and some pupils just with learning difficulties and disabilities. So that prompted myself and my team at school to think, actually, is there a potential use of this therapy approach with our AAC users? So when I talk about AAC, I'm talking about augmentative and alternative communication. This basically is a really fancy term summing up any other form of communication than speech. So this can be things like exchanging pictorial symbols, it can be using Makaton signing or British Sign Language, using our hands, or it can be things as simple as using our body language and our facial expression to communicate. 18.9% of all UK AAC users have a diagnosis of autism. So that's quite a large percentage. It's the 3rd most popular category within our AAC users, second only to our older generation, so people who have things like Parkinson's or dementia. Social communication and interaction skills are often highlighted within this client group as an area of challenge, and that's because a lot of our users actually don't have the opportunity to communicate with a wide range of participants and other members of the community. Andrews et al. Did a really lovely study in 2012 which highlighted the potential benefits to verbal communication of Lego-based therapy, such as vocabulary development, which is an area that could really considerably be improved with our AAC users. Anecdotal observations have also been made by many speech and language therapists, both working in SEN provisions of special educational needs and also actually in community clinics. So as a result of this, we felt that actually it has the potential to help develop multiple areas of communicative competency within our AAC users. So communicative competency is basically talking about overall effective communication. Light in 1987 created a model, which you can see behind me. Originally there were the 4 spheres, so we have linguistic competency, social competency, operational and strategic. When we talk about linguistic competency, we're talking about our ability to use language, words, sentence structuring, and our ability to understand concepts. So if I look at a cat, I understand that that cat represents the linguistic term cat, but it also represents other cats around. So it's not just that black and white one in front of me, it can be a large tabby cat, it can be a lion, there's lots of different other animals that can fall under that. When we talk about social competency, we're thinking about our social interaction and communication skills. There's something that we've already mentioned can be developed using Lego-based therapy. Operational competency is the ability to actually functionally communicate. If I communicate by exchanging a picture symbol, can I do that? Can I reach across and exchange that symbol with my partner? If I'm using eye gaze, so some of our pupils will use their pupil movement to select icons on a screen, can they actually use and control their pupil movement? And strategic competency, which is our last area, is the ability to problem solve. So if I use a high-tech communication aid, something like an app on an iPad, if suddenly my iPad dies, which obviously, as you've seen before, technology does fail us at times, can I still communicate my message? So that could be using simple head nods and shakes, or it can be just using facial expressions, smiling, looking like, no, actually, that's really not the right selection. You can see around the model, we've also got 2 additional supports. So we have our psychosocial factors at the top, and we have our environmental supports at the bottom. These were later additions that Light made to her framework. She felt that actually, as well as our main areas of competency, there were factors that really did help to support the development of these areas. So things like, is our individual actually motivated to communicate? And is our environment supportive enough around the pupil? Linking this to Lego-based therapy, Lego-based therapy is a fantastic way of developing not only one area of competency, such as linguistic, but also multiple areas of competency. The structure of the group means that there are 4 roles within it which give children the opportunity to practice a range of different skills in each role. So our first role is the engineer. Our engineer is the leader of our group. They have the instructions. They're the only person to see what our build looks like, what we're actually doing step by step, and they need to then communicate that to the rest of the group. This obviously is a largely expressive role. Our pupil that's taken on this role needs the ability to communicate, whether that's via speech, whether that's via symbols or signs. We then have the supplier. So our supplier, generally that's the boring role that most pupils don't want to take on. They hold all of the pieces at the beginning, and listening to the instructions given by the engineer, they then share this out amongst the group. So by the end of the build, they're left with nothing. This is largely a receptive role, so they really need to be able to understand things like concepts. Can they understand colour, shape, size, all of these quite complex vocabulary challenges. We then have our builder, which is the role everybody wants. The builder starts with nothing and ends with the completed model. They're the only ones to touch the model, and the only ones to be able to move pieces around, put things on, under, next to, or behind. Again, this is quite a receptive role. They need to be able to understand things like positioning, but also social language. That's right, that's not right. We then have a 4th role, which is our inspector, and this is quite a challenging role. So our inspector makes sure that our team is working effectively. They highlight where there are problems in the group and then suggest solutions and facilitating the kind of successful getting over of these problems. Thinking about this from a gamification perspective is something that I hadn't really considered. I've recently been working with Suzanne Go at Manchester Metropolitan University, who is really into simulation and gamification. And she really helped me to view this in a completely different way than I had before. So when we view Lego-based therapy, we can actually view it as an approach that uses many gamification techniques. It provides a balance between the development of social interaction and gaming, which is exactly what we want to do with Lego-based therapy. The idea of Lego-based therapy is that the motivator is intrinsic. At the end of the session, I don't need to get certificates and stickers out. The pupils are motivated enough to come to my session because they get to build a model. They get to then take that model back to class, share it with their peers, and have something fun that they've achieved within my session. Adults within our Lego-based therapy sessions act as facilitators, which basically means that rather than taking control of the entire session, we take a huge back step, and instead we put the pupils in control. We're simply there to facilitate. So instead of saying, none of you are listening, you need to stop and try again, we might say, is there a problem here? What can we do about it? This really draws influence from social constructivism, with the adult's role less of a teacher and more a part of a cooperative learning process. So you can see by the diagram here, it's very much on an equal basis to both the learner and the environment around us. For pupils who use AAC, effective communication partners are essential. Most AAC users are reliant upon a family member, friend, or member of educational staff who really are there to support them in their communication with the wider world. Within these sessions, learners are then able to demonstrate capabilities that actually they might not be able to exhibit in other environments if they don't have that strong, supportive communication partner there. And that then enables them to make their own conclusions. Do I like my communication system, or actually does this not work for me? Do we need something different? Lego-based therapy, as I've said, is actually one of the only naturalistic social competency interventions that succeeded in participants generalising learnt skills. A lot of our social interventions within speech and language therapy are very, very standardised. They're not very realistic, and in the end, although we might make some improvements, they tend to stay within the environment they've been learned. Mosley and Witten suggest that if created with a balance between gaming and educational content, games can develop experiential learning and generalisation of skills, which at the end of the day is the main aim of all speech and language therapy interventions. They also suggest that games can promote key generalisable skills such as communication, negotiation and teamwork, all things that are going to lead towards effective communicative competence overall. So at Lansbury Bridge, which is the school that I'm from, we ran a series of case studies to try and evaluate the effectiveness of Lego-based therapy with this client group. I must point out that when I talk about Lego-based therapy in this context, it is an adapted form of Lego-based therapy. Unfortunately, we were unable to deliver the therapy to the mark as Le Goff designed it in his original Lego-based therapy manual, and we'll talk about the reasons why in a moment. But our initial findings from this series of case studies highlighted the potential benefits of using this gamification approach to develop not only single areas of competency, such as social, which it was originally designed for with our ASD population, but also multiple areas of communicative competency. Our findings also indicated a successful adaptation of the original therapy model, which was something that we actually were unsure would work in the practicalities of everyday life in a classroom. Some other case study outcomes that we found were that they actually provided us with insights into the development of communicative competency, which is a notoriously difficult area of communication in general to develop. It also allowed us to see and really get in touch with the influence of the psychosocial factors and environmental supports, which was something that can often get missed and was missed a lot in our environment, as we don't often consider things like family influence, supporting communication partners, and whether we have consistent communication partners throughout the day when TAs and teachers go on lunch or have to work with other pupils. The project also highlighted the importance of recognising and responding to linguistic, operational, social and strategic challenges faced by children using AAC devices. This is something that again was previously missed. A lot of our pupils will find it very, very taxing to communicate. So if they're sat in a classroom and they're not being asked any questions, if it takes me 6 minutes to create a 2-word sentence and I'm not really motivated, why am I going to do that? By bringing them into a really motivating session where they want to participate, actually they were then able to show us, these are the challenges I experience out of the therapy room, but here I am able to show you what I am actually able to achieve. So overall, we really took from our findings that the use of adapted Lego-based therapy with young AAC users isn't without challenges, but those challenges aren't insurmountable. Some considerations that really do need to be made when viewing this as a potential therapeutic approach for this client group is that, though, as I've said, adapted Lego-based therapy is what we've used, and there are significant differences between this adapted version and the standardised model set out by Le Goff in his original manual. There are significant differences in the role of adult facilitators. In Le Goff's original model, we take a very passive stance during the sessions. However, with this AAC client group, we did really need to get a lot more involved. Not necessarily in terms of telling the group our problems and helping to solve them, but actually in acting as communication partners for our members within the group. All adult facilitators in the group required a lot more training and support than those in ASC groups, and generally that was because of the complex communication challenges experienced by the pupils that were attending our sessions. Some sessions were quite short in duration. Le Goff originally recommends 40 minutes to an hour. Some of our pupils were only able to do 10 minutes, especially our pupils who use eye gaze technology to communicate. It's very taxing, and after 5-10 minutes, a lot of them were done. So we found that instead of doing 1 session per week, we were maybe doing 4 or 5 sessions per week, but for shorter lengths of time. There was also a large time requirement for the personalisation of resources, whereas we'd create standard packs for our general client groups. For this client group, we were really having to tailor packs for each session and each pupil, which really did impact the clinical costings. There was also a need for potential preparatory sessions to develop the prerequisite skills needed to participate in group sessions, which was something that, again, weren't required with our ASC population. So things that were covered during these preparatory sessions included things like folder navigation skills on high-tech devices. Can the pupil navigate through their AAC system to find the folder that they need that might contain colours, shapes or sizes? And also teaching and the use of social language. A lot of our pupils don't use social language. They tend to get taught things like nouns, which aren't really that useful, things like biscuit, cup, Play-Doh. We were then finding actually it's more important to teach them things like more, stop, no, that's wrong, try again. All of the social language required to actively participate in a social interaction with their peers. Loads of references here, which I'm not going to go into, but if any of you do want to look into it anymore, I'm happy to share these with anybody else. But I do just want to say, on ending this, like I said before, I am a speech and language therapist, so I am coming at this from a majorly communication perspective. So if anybody does have any other ideas or any suggestions of other ways that we could think about this and think about our logotherapy approach, please feel free. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or get in contact if you've got any more questions. But thank you for listening.
Any questions for Nikki?